So thank you for joining this session today. I know it's the last day of the show and a half day, so I appreciate you being here. This session will talk about real-time change data capture and replication. My name is Tyler Reynolds with Theobald Software. I'm the Director of Sales. And what we'll talk about today is strategies for replicating data from SAP to outside environments, and specifically talking about table-based data replication. I will cover two methods for approaching this. Both of these methods that I'll introduce will have the same result, but can be utilized in different ways depending on your existing SAP landscape. So first, just to start talking about replicating data from SAP to outside environments. I know DataSphere is becoming more and more popular, and the analytics tools that are built in there. But many companies and organizations have been using outside environments such as Snowflake, Azure, Google, Databricks, because they've been in the market for a long time and have really robust platforms for cloud storage and also analytics capabilities. So many organizations are still on those platforms, maybe haven't made the transition to DataSphere yet, or it could be that it's not one or the other. It's still possible for companies to maybe use DataSphere, but also have scenarios where they need to bring the data outside for certain analytics or business intelligence solution. As you know, many tables in SAP can be very large, have massive amounts of data, and changing constantly. And then, so the question is, if you're looking to replicate these tables from SAP into the outside environments, how can you achieve this while keeping the data synced up between SAP and that target environment? It's not easy or possible to do by doing full table replications constantly. And so you need a way to do this in delta or incremental loads. And so what I'll talk about today is at Theobald Software, we have solutions for this type of SAP data extraction and replication. And there's two methods that I'll talk about today of how you can achieve this. The first one is utilizing SAP ODP. So ODP, or Operational Data Provisioning, is a framework that SAP released with HANA. And at a high level, it's meant for basically doing replication, including delta loads from S/4HANA into BW4HANA systems. So with that framework, and also utilizing the SAP SLT, or Landscape Transformation Framework, that gives you, in addition to this object and BW type delta loads, the ability to do this on a table-based replication. So setting triggers at the table level, so anytime there's a change, whether it's an insert, update, or delete, you're able to pull those changes over into your desired destination. Again, with ODP, it's meant mainly to stay within the HANA landscape, but with the Theobald tools that I'll mention in just a few moments here, we basically leverage that same capability, that same change data incremental capture, and then give you the ability to push that into outside systems. And so how does this work? So this screen here will show the architecture of how you would use this using the ODP framework in conjunction with the SLT server. So it all starts over on the SAP side. So with SLT, with the SLT server, what happens is there's a function module that's provided that basically sets a trigger on your desired table. So this can be any table in your ERP system. Primarily, these are S/4HANA systems. Some later ECC systems will work for this as well, depending on your ABAP version. But along with that database trigger, what happens is it will track these changes, whether it's an insert, update, or delete, and then push those to a log table. And then with the SLT server and ODP framework, it tracks these changes. Any change to that table where you've set this up, and then ODP allows you to move this outside. And then the Theobald Software solution here, Extract Universal. This is an application that we've developed, and you can think of this as an SAP extract and load tool. Extract Universal will basically pull data from SAP and stream this into a target environment. In this case, when you're talking about large data replication, this is primarily going to be some sort of cloud storage or data warehouse. The BI analytics scenario, probably not as common here. That's meant more for BW queries or T-code extractions. But for this conversation, what you would use is the Extract Universal tool. And what that tool provides is a set of different connectors. You can see here on this screen, there's this nice little icon for ODP. So this connector allows you to tap into ODP objects as a subscriber. In this case, we're tapping into the ODP SLT framework, which allows us to leverage those insert, update, delete changes that ODP is tracking. So we pick that up in our tool, and then we send that to an outside environment, again, AWS, Azure, Snowflake, Databricks, whatever environment that you're interested in using in your company. One important thing to note here is that all of these changes are tracked at the database level, at the table level. However, when our tool actually pulls the data, it will pull over RFC protocol. This is important because instead of pulling directly from the database, you're pulling this data over RFC in the context of an SAP user. And so a lot of times the customers we work with are very interested in knowing not only the data was pulled, but who was the one who triggered this, what rights and privileges do they have in their SAP user account, and those same privileges will pull over with our tool here. So that helps with the security and maintaining the roles and privileges that you have from that SAP user. And how this looks in our tool, this is a screenshot from Extract Universal with the ODP component. You can see it starts by selecting your table. In this case, table KNA1, we're interested in tracking these changes. With ODP, there's many different types of contexts. These could be different objects. In this case, it's SLT. ODP provides other objects such as CDS views, HANA views, calculation views. But you would select that here in this context screen. And then at the bottom here is where you would see what type of data pull that you're requesting. If you would select Delta Update, this is how you would leverage those changes that are being tracked by that trigger and log table. And so I would select Delta Update here. I can pull the entire table if I'm interested in replicating the whole table. I can also pick and choose certain fields or columns that I'm interested in tracking if I want to keep in mind maybe data load sizes. So those are some of the options you have. You also have the option to pull the full table on the first run. So if you set this to extract on initialization, it'll pull the full table and then add the changes as they occur. So this was the first of the two options. Again, what I just spoke about here had the prerequisites that you are on an SLT server or you utilize an SLT server. And you're either on an S/4HANA system or you're on a later ECC system that supports ODP. I mentioned in this case we were focused on table-based replication, but as I mentioned, one nice thing about ODP is that you can choose other sources, things like HANA views, CDS views, BW objects, and others. The nice thing about using this method also with the Extract Universal tool is there's no other setups required on the SAP system. It works out of the box. The only thing that you need to take into account is that SAP user's privileges, making sure they have the right authority objects to request the data. So what if you're interested in this type of data extraction, but maybe you don't have an SLT server or you're on an earlier ECC system? So with our tool, we have a different component, which is called table CDC. And basically with this component, what we do here is sort of mimic what's happening with the SLT server and that ODP system. And we're helping to create this database trigger and the log table for you and do this in an automated fashion, but still doing this data pull over the RFC protocol, over the RFC layer. And the way we go about this is trying to make this very easy to do so that you don't have to go and manually set these triggers or log tables every time there's a table you want to replicate. And so we try to do this in a very easy to use, no-code fashion. The architecture with this table CDC component, very similar. However, you'll notice there's no section for the SLT server environment. That's not required here. The main difference you'll see is the function module that's used. We provide a custom function module here. This is the only prerequisite you would need to use this component. You would just import this function module as a transport into your ECC or S/4HANA system. Once you do this, that function module will take care of setting up the database trigger, will take care of generating that log table for you. And then just as before, we will do the data pull over the application layer, the RFC layer, and again, utilize that same SAP user security and roles that you have set up. From there, you have the same options sending to the external systems, whether that's cloud storage or an on-prem database. And the way that's set up here, again, this is all fully no-code. Once you import this function module into your system, you can start working with this. A couple things to note here that can be important is that once you set up this initialization, you pick your table just as before. You see here that the state is not yet initialized, but it tells you the log table that will be created. Once I click OK here, there's maybe 2 more clicks to set this up, and then what this will do in the background is set that trigger and log table. We've set a couple of safeguards for this. You can see, for example, there is an option to limit your log table size. This can be helpful. For example, let's say you set up this change data on this table KNA1, and if you are maybe forgetting that you have this trigger set up, or if something happens where you're no longer pulling from that log table, if you're not pulling from that log table, it will just grow and grow exponentially. And so we have a option here where you want to set a max on that log table, sort of a safeguard so that there's not a table in your system that's just growing without a cap. We also make it very easy. This is grayed out here, so it might be hard to see. But if you ever want to stop the change data capture on this, or if you want to edit it somehow, you can easily, with one click, delete those CDC resources, meaning the log table and the database trigger. And then so you can always keep your system clean if you're no longer needing those changes tracked. And so here, again, same concept. You're pulling table-based replication over the RFC layer. In each case, our solutions are SAP certified for third-party integration, where they're using that table CDC component where we provide the function module, or if you're leveraging ODP. In either case, it's a SAP certified solution. And with both options, you're getting these these changes tracks. And you can leverage this by setting this up in a automated fashion. You can automate these table polls, or these log table polls every day, every hour, every 5 minutes. And this is how you'd achieve the real-time replication. And so once you pull from a log table, it sends it to your target environment, the log table clears, and then the database trigger will continue filling that log table as changes continue. So it's really sort of a streaming scenario. You set this up extraction-based, again, depending on how often you want those changes tracked to make this real time. With the ODP option, again, there's a couple of prerequisites in your SAP landscape. Primarily for S/4HANA, you need an SLT server. But if you have those two checkboxes, then it's plug and play with our solutions. If you don't have one of those set up, you can still leverage that same capability. The only thing you would need to do is insert that function module that we provide. And so, yeah, that ends the overview. So thank you for coming. If you do have questions on how this works, feel free to ask. We also have a booth where we can show a demo of how this works. Or you can come up and talk to me after this. Thank you.